Right?
Confusing.
So some of it is a little bit confusing. What part are you talking about that's confusing?
I thought the whole chapter was 4 through 6 were like a lot was happening, so I was just like, ah.
I agree. There is a lot of things happening, and all of you are up to chapter 6 hopefully by today, correct?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over some of the vocabulary words that have been popping up throughout the book, and I know that Ms. Hagen has talked about some of them. We're just kind of going to dig a little bit deeper to see if we can't help uncover some of the mysteries of what these words might mean and help us understand the characters better, the plot, and those kinds of things. So I'm just going to show you quickly some of the words. We've heard sharecropping. Yes, have we read that word?
Yeah.
The Jim Crow laws. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because I know you guys have talked about that before. Is that still a major theme in our story?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Plantation. You've heard that word, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Tenant farming. Not to be confused with sharecropping, but it gets kind of confusing, doesn't it? We're going to try to break those out a little bit and see if we can't figure out the difference between those two today. Credit and mercantile, those kind of go together. What store or what place would those two words go together in our story?
I don't know what it's called.
You're close. The Wallace store is a what? It's a mercantile, isn't it? All right. Just going to need your brief definition of each one. You don't have to write these down right now. We're going to talk about them a little bit more. Sharecropping, it gets a little confusing. The landowner provides seeds and tools and all kinds of things. So who would be a sharecropper? What's the only thing that I have to have if I want a sharecrop? I really only need one thing. What's one thing I would need to be a sharecropper? Money? No, I don't. Who has a different thought maybe? Yes, ma'am.
Land?
Do I need land to be a sharecropper?
Yeah.
Okay, let's read this. I'm not a landowner when I'm a sharecropper. If someone else owns the land and they give me everything that I need to work the land. So all I have to do is what? Work the land. That's what I give. I give all of my work to the person who owns the land. And I don't really have any money. We're going to kind of separate these concepts out a little bit more as we go through. So sharecropping, who's a sharecropper in our story? Do we know who a sharecropper is in our story?
Basically everyone that has buildings and land and then everyone sharecrops on it.
Are the Grangers a sharecropper?
No.
We'll get into that a little bit. So these are good things that we're identifying. There's a lot of confusion with these big words in this story. We talked about that. Plantation, an estate on which crops like coffee, sugar, and what are they growing in our story? It's not listed.
Cotton.
I heard it, cotton. So who owns the plantation in your story? I hear two answers. I hear Grangers and Logans. Which one is it? Who owns that?
The Grangers has Logans and can't own land by themselves.
You got half of that correct. The Grangers have the giant plantation, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so they own most of the land. Tenant farming. It's close to sharecropping, but not quite. So the landowner, like the Grangers, they rent a portion of the land to individuals. So if I want to be a tenant farmer, I need money then, don't I?
Yeah.
I need money to rent it. And how am I going to get money? I'm going to grow my crops, sell them, give some of that money to the landowner, and then hopefully I'll have enough to then pay my rent and pay for all my supplies. Okay, so is this better or worse than sharecropping, do you think?
There's pros and cons of both.
There's pros and cons.
That one's easy. I think it's better. Yeah.
Do you have a reason?
Because then you can as it says, rent portions of it. You don't have to rent all.
Okay, different answers. So tenant farming and sharecropping. Close, but not exactly the same. Credit. When you buy something on credit. Do you know anyone who has a credit card?
Yeah.
Why do people use a credit card, do you think? This is the same concept. What do you think?
You don't have to carry around cash.
Don't have to carry around cash. What's another reason? Yeah.
If they don't want to pay it like right now, then they can have it on the credit card, so then they can pay it later.
Excellent. Maybe I don't have any cash, but I'm going to give you my good word. If you give me the stuff I want now, I give you my good word. I'm going to sell my crops, and then I'll pay you back. That's what credit. Where would they need credit? Who issues people credit in your story? What do you think?
Papa.
Who says I'm going to give you credit so that you can have something, but even though you don't have the money right now?
The Wallaces.
The Wallaces. Who owns their store? Who owns their store? Who owns that Wallace store? Do you know?
Is it Harlan Granger?
He seems to own everything, doesn't he? So you can get credit at the Wallace store, and then the Grangers will extend credit to let you use their land, right? Yes, sir.
I found another one, like the insurance guy, when his grandpa bought the extra 300 acres, they're still paying off, so that's Papa has to go to their loan.
That's a great example. That is a wonderful example. And what would be a mercantile in today's world?
Lawyer.
The Walgreens.
A Walgreens is a mercantile. What else? ID, same concept. But back in the old days, had all of it in one little store. Has anyone ever gone to a small Iowa town?
Yeah.
Gone into one of those old grocery stores?
Yes.
Think of that. It's very similar. Some Iowa towns, you can still find them. They're very much the same. This is just a definition of all of them. We'll get to those. Okay, that's what makes sense. Get to that. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I will pass out to you the sheet. Okay, fine. Pass it back. Now you're going to use your pencils. We're going to try to break out these words so we kind of understand the difference. So your sheet of paper you have is going to have enough room for 2 words. And we're going to try to help you understand the differences between 2 different words or the similarities. So I started with plantation, as you can see there. And up here, so I'm going to use 2 words. Anything above the line is going to be plantation. And then below my line, I would put information for tenant farming. Does this make any sense? So it's kind of into 4 squares, big squares. See that? So I wanted to define plantation in my own words, which aren't really all that great sometimes. I don't want you to just write exactly what it says in the book or on a piece of paper. I want you to think about the word. I said large areas of land planted and worked for crops like cotton and tobacco. That's how I said it. Mostly before Civil War, labor was provided by slaves. So, our story is in 1933, so it's after the Civil War. The giant plantations that used to be run by slaves, they got to be huge because the slaves did all the work. And plantation owners didn't have to pay them, so they could have a lot more land. Well, slavery is no longer legal, is it? So then those plantation owners needed money, and they started to share or sell parts of their land because it was too much land for them to work. Too many taxes they had to pay. So they couldn't afford it, so they started selling off some of their land. So plantation, you don't really hear that word used very much today. That was kind of back in the slavery years when we used that word. So that's my definition. What are things I know about plantations? They're in the South. Do you know of any up north? Not too many. It was a very common thing in the South. Slave labor was how they were kept profitable and running. Who owned them? The white man owned the. That's things I know about plantations. Over here, what's an example? I think of my story that we're reading. Let's think of Roll of Thunder. So let's think of the story where we're hearing these words. Grangers. Is that an example of a plantation in your story? It is. What's things that's not a plantation? Jamesons didn't have a plantation. So were they usual or unusual?
Unusual.
Very unusual. So this is an example of how I want you to do this. Now on your paper you have now, right up here, I want you to put tenant farming on the top. Tenant farming there. Sharecropping down here.
Sharecropping.
Sharecropping. That's a little backwards. Okay, now, before you start filling in some of that, I have something else I would like you to read. And this is the side I want you guys to read. The first paragraph talks about tenant farming. Gives a little more explanation. The second paragraph talks about shared property, and it points out the differences. I don't want you to just copy exactly, use some of the words, but I want you to think about it in your story as it relates to the story you guys have been reading. Yes, if you're ready, find your partner, right? Do pairs. Next to, find a partner. And work on filling out your paper. Defining in your own words each term. You might have to do 2 more, so you're going to have to hurry up. Joining in with 3. Find in your own words, tenant farming. You can do little bullet points if you want. Short, real short sentences will be very efficient for you. Yes, you are correct. So the question was, and I know it's a little confusing, and this top part is a definition that you would come up with for tenant farmer. This would be the definition of sharecropper. So you can see the differences real close. Okay? So tenant farming facts, sharecropping facts. Are you watching that? Does that make a little bit of sense? Example of a tenant farmer. Think of your story. Example of sharecropping. If you can find any. Things that are not tenant farming. Things that are not, or people who are not sharecropping. So, for example, what's a non-example of a tenant farmer? What's a not fact?
Logans.
Correct. Logans are a non-example. Landowners are a non-example. I'm not sure if we have examples of tenant farmers, but what are some of the things that make up a tenant farmer? Describe a tenant farmer in your own words. Who has an example, an easy way to describe a tenant farmer? Or is there one? Rents out land from a farmer, plantation owner. What do you think? And how is it different from being the sharecropper? Define share.
Schools and other supplies.
Is Harlan Granger a tenant farmer? What do we think?
Yes. No.
He's a what? Harlan Granger.
Landowner.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not supposed to say that. That's only for
Vocab words.
vocab. Correct. He's the landowner. He used to own a big plantation. Okay, so he's the guy, the big white guy in control. That, tries to stay in control. He's the landowner. He's not. So he would be a great non-example of both of these, wouldn't he? Harlan Granger could go in both of those sections, and that's okay. You can have repeats. You know, he's not a tenant farmer. He's not a sharecropper. I like that.
Oh, but then you put his name down for tenant farming on the examples?
No, I put him as a non-example. Not. He's not. What would be an example of a tenant farmer? You have him in the story. And so,
The Adrian. Wow.
So if we say over here, Rangers are not. Who else is not either one of those things in your story? He only comes in the story once in a while. He's related to Logan.
Mr. Morrison?
He's related to
Uncle Hammer?
Hold on. He's related to Logan's, and he comes in every once in a
Mr.
while.
Morrison? Uncle Hammer?
Uncle Hammer. He's not either one of these, is he?
He's got a cool car.
Yeah. So he's a good non-example. Okay? He's neither one of those. Same with traditional. Let's do the same thing, guys.
Most popularity after
Take your paper, turn it over. Can you kind of see the lines on it still?
Yeah. That's the whole reason he got that.
Same idea. Let's do Mercantile.